SoundCast.
This is a Village SoundCast Network original production.
This is Less Than Live with Kate or Die, a bi-weekly podcast about comics from all angles. I'm going to talk to you about what I'm reading and doing in the industry, as well as interviewing some of my friends and favorite creators. So come along with me on this journey into geek culture. On today's show, we're back from the dead with a slew of new comic recommendations. I chat with insanely prolific writer Marguerite Bennett, who seems to write basically everything, and then I talk about Over the Garden Wall for what seems like forever and ever. Well, hi everybody. How was your Halloween? I had a pretty good one. Did you? Okay, I asked that already. It's our 10th episode! I know that's a really natural topic change, but oh my God, we're here. I hope to be saying it again with so much enthusiasm when we get to 100 or 10,000 because, as you all know, I'm immortal. So we're here and a ton of stuff is going on. We launched a Patreon. I'm going to talk to you more about that later on. But personally, I wrote a bunch of stuff and it came out. Last week, Bittersweets came out, which is the newest Adventure Time graphic novel that I've written, drawn by Zachary Sterling, who's absolutely incredible, and colored by Whitney Kogar because it's in color. It's so exciting. This book is all about Peppermint Butler and Princess Bubblegum going on a quest, and it's so cool to see it out there and to see two books that I wrote on a shelf next to each other. It's a really exciting feeling. I can't. That's cool. So that came out, and then this week, because I always just assume that you are listening to this the exact specific time that I imagine you are listening to it in. I also think that you look really nice in that outfit, and that you should probably say sorry to that person. Don't you love just listening to me giggle on my podcast? So this week was Bravest Warriors number 26, as well as Fraggle Rock number 2. So it's Kate Lethal Ages week, if you're into that kind of thing. Fraggle Rock is halfway through now, because there's 2 issues left to go. Again, that's drawn by Jake Myler, who is unstoppable, and his use of color is fantastic. These books are being put out by Archaea, and if you've picked them up, the one thing that you might notice first about them is they're just so nicely put together. It's this absolutely gorgeous semi-matte cover stock, and the paper's really, really nice. The design is really, really nice. So it's kind of a treat to pick up every issue, even though I see the previews and stuff of the comics themselves before it comes out, because it just looks so classy, and I'm so excited to see what the trade paperback or hardcover collection is going to look like, because those guys make really, really good book collections. Bravest Warriors 26 starts a whole new arc that is about robots and monsters, but also romance. And I'm really excited to see kind of what their reaction is going to be to that, because I'm taking a little bit of a risk with it. It's definitely different than the show at this point. Ian and I have had a lot of fun with that one. So that's really, really cool. Edward Scissorhands issue number 2 is out next week. Thought it was this week. It's actually next week. So that's November 19th is what I'm talking about. And then you get a little bit of a break from my stuff until December. Hooray! So that's, kind of everything that I've been doing. I feel like I've just been writing and writing and writing. And, I always get to these weeks where it feels like, oh, I just crossed those deadlines and now I can actually sleep. And I'm kind of in that space right now, which is really awesome. So much has happened. I've been traveling. Let's talk about that.
She was here and now she's gone. Click your heels, now she's at the car.
Who's feeding her cat?
My roommate,
Who's working shit?
Lisa.
What's the next city on Kate's car?
So I went to Puerto Rico, and that's a thing that happened in my life. I was invited by a shop down in San Juan to come to the Comics Megazone, which is a shop, Halloween Comics Fest. And that was a weird thing to be invited to. Not that it was absolutely wonderful, but some days when you wake up with an email that's like, hey, can we fly you to Puerto Rico to go to a comic convention? You sit there for a while and stare at the wall and wonder how you ended up here, and then you feel really good and a little scared. So all of those things happened, and then I went to Puerto Rico. And the con there was a delight. The people who ran it were absolutely wonderful. The costumes were really, really cool, and I got to meet a bunch of cosplayers who were invited, and that was really neat. It was a tiny little show, and just for the weekend, but we had some fun panels, and there's some really cute kids and stuff that came by, and it was in this absolutely beautiful hotel in San Juan. It was really cool. It was neat that got to happen. So that was really awesome. Thanks to Comics Megazone for bringing me down for that. It's such a crazy out of the blue thing, and yay! After that, I went to exotic Halifax, which is where I live, and not actually exotic, but pretty nice. Last weekend we had here in town HalCon, which was its either third or fourth year running, and I was a guest of it, which is kind of crazy to be a guest of a con in your own hometown, and that was great. Bittersweets had just come out, and so I had a whole bunch of books and a whole bunch of comics, and it was so cool. I had no idea what to expect, because when you live somewhere, you have no idea if people are actually going to come out where they kind of have access to you whenever, especially when I work at a comic book shop here. So I kind of expected to end up with a bunch of books left over and just to have a really great weekend, because my boyfriend was in town from LA, so that was really nice. But it was fantastic. I mean, the turnout was amazing, and the costumes were amazing, and so many kids came by, and there was a little girl named Hero that came to get comics signed, and she was all excited because I'm a lady and I write comics, and my heart grew 3 sizes. So Hero, you are mine. There was also an absolutely adorable girl named Piper who does her own webcomics called Aries the Dog of War. And yeah, she's 14, and it's done in like pencil crayon, and she was dressed up like Robin, and it gave me so much hope. Little people that come and buy my comics, there's just nothing like it, and it was really exciting. So those were some definite highlights of the show. Also a bar in town named a drink after me, and I had a lot of them. What a weekend. It was so much fun. And I'm on my way to the Miami Book Fair in a little bit, the 22nd and 23rd, I believe. And then I kind of take a little bit of a con break until early next year. So Jason's going to have to find a reason for us to use that song again. I'm going to lie. I just get Sleep Con, TV Con, Cartoon Con. That's where I was. Pajamas Con. No, it's been really fantastic. I cannot believe I've done like 12 conventions this year. If you hate your body, try that. It's interesting. See if you can survive. I don't even know if there's anything real specific until Staple, which is in March of next year. So if you're in Miami, come see me, because otherwise you gotta wait till it's like warm again. Oh no, you're in Miami, it's always warm. Never mind. Let's get on with the show.
What is Kate reading?
What am I reading now?
What is Kate reading?
What am I reading now?
I have been a very bad comics reader for the last 2 weeks because I have been a very busy comic writer. And I was saying to the guys in the studio, every week do I say I haven't been reading enough? And it's kind of true, but this last 2 weeks has been eaten up by something that I think a lot of you might have seen if you follow me on Twitter or on Tumblr, because I have talked about it nonstop, which is Over the Garden Wall, which is a cartoon, so not a comic necessarily, but I feel that the worlds overlap so much that it's fine if I talk about it for an extended period of time. Over the Garden Wall is a miniseries that Cartoon Network put out that it was created by a couple of people who had worked on Adventure Time, as well as a number of others, mostly created by Patrick McHale, who had worked on that. And it is so it's a miniseries. It's 10 episodes that are 11 minutes long each. So they're packaged like a standard cartoon. So, 2 11-minute episodes make one 22-minute episode. So it's actually only 5 episodes. And what you really need to know is you can watch the entire thing in about 2.5 hours. And you should watch it all at once. You can do it in installments. That's how it aired on TV, which with, 1 2-part episode every night for a week, which is really cool. But you definitely get a lot out of it from watching the entire thing at once. And what it is this... It reads, or watches, I guess. I'm so used to talking about comics. It watches like an early 1900s storybook. And a lot of people have said that it's kind of got a Wind in the Willows feel. There's definitely that, like creepy children's story element that a lot of people bring. We'll mention Coraline as being an example of a really great creepy children's story. And I totally agree that it has some feelings to that. But there's also a Studio Ghibli kind of a vibe to a lot of it. It's basically... Yeah, and very, I think pretty heavy folklore influence as well. And it's a story about these two brothers, Wirt and Greg, who find themselves in a place called the Unknown, and they're on this quest to find their way home, which is great. And I love a hero's journey story. It's fantastic. And they encounter all kinds of interesting mythical creatures and anthropomorphic animals and spooky things in the woods. And it is so catered to my interests that I can't believe it's real. I was really excited about the show and had been tweeting about it a bunch, and actually got contacted by somebody at Cartoon Network who sent me this amazing little package of a record and a book that goes with the show. And basically, that's this sort of older tradition of storybooks where you have this record that plays, and every time there's a sound of a steam train, you turn the page and it tells the story of Over the Garden Wall, which is so unbelievably charming. I was like sitting in my chair kind of hyperventilating when I opened it. And I am such a huge fan of that kind of really, really lovingly handcrafted viral marketing. And they did, Leica did that so well with Paranorman and with all the amazing stuff they sent me for the box trolls. So this was really, really exciting and so out of the blue. But so I went, and as soon as I got this package, I went and watched the entire series because you can get it on iTunes. It's $10. You should do it. And by the end of the first episode, was sitting in the dark with, all my lights off, full screen on my computer, just in complete awe of how beautiful it is and what a great story it is. So, there are so many people working on this that work within the world of comics at Boom. So there's people who've worked on Bee and Puppycat and Adventure Time and Regular Show, I think, and stuff like that. So, if those are things that you are interested in, you should definitely check it out. I am madly in love with how much amazing animation is out there these days. And I think, there is this total crossover between comics and animation. And so many people I know that work in comics and work in comic book stores and read a lot of comics, watch a lot of cartoons because natural progression. But, with so much amazing stuff out there right now, I'm crazy about Gravity Falls and Steven Universe and Bob's Burgers, which I'm getting really, really into and I think has the best comedic timing on television. There's just so much good stuff out there. So, I take a break from writing comics to watch cartoons, and it's all kind of homework. Outside of that, I do read. I am still literate. And a lot of stuff came out this week. A lot of stuff came out last week, too. And there's an enormous pile sitting next to my bed. But some honorable mentions of things that I've either just started or I'm really excited to get into. She-Hulk number 10 is out. And the horrible news came to us that She-Hulk is ending with number 12, which is awful because this run has been amazing. I still don't understand people who don't love Javier Pulido's art, and I don't even like to say it because it's so beautiful. But She-Hulk is great. Charles Soule writing it works in law and has an incredible understanding of it, but also writes these amazing superhero storylines. So it's half Jennifer Walters in the courtroom and half Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk, kicking butt and flying around the city with Hellcat. And this latest storyline deals with old man Captain America and this accusation that when he was younger, he basically caused the death of a friend. And it's so good. It's so good. The Kevin Wada covers are, some of the best covers out there in the world. And you know how I feel about Kevin Wada. He's just the best. So, if you haven't checked it out yet, the first trade paperback of She-Hulk is out now. And get the single issues because, there's only 10. There's only going to be 12. It's going to be a perfect little miniseries, but I wish it had gone on forever. Witches #2 is out this week, which is fantastic because god damn, that's a good horror comic. I loved the first issue so much, and it was pretty much universally beloved by creepsters. And, it's this awesome series that Scott Snyder and Jock are doing about, witchcraft in modern America. And I haven't read the second issue yet, but I looked through the first couple pages and it's so creepy. I'm so happy. I love how great and just weird and dark it is. And Scott Snyder has this incredibly charming thing about him that I think is so similar with people like Joe Hill, where he is the sweetest looking and nicest man you will ever meet in the world and writes the darkest, most disturbing shit. And that is utterly charming to me. New this week was The Kitchen from Ollie Masters, Ming Doyle, and Jordi Belair, which I am very excited for. And I had seen some art from Ming as it was coming together, and she had talked to me a little bit about it at Heroes Con earlier this year. Ming's art has been a favorite of mine for a long time. She's an amazing friend and one of the best dressed people in comics. Not really important to the story, but if you ever see her, you'll be like, oh yeah, she was right. The story is set in the 70s in New York and is about some, Irish gangsters and basically a group of women whose husbands are all taken off to jail, and they have to take care of Hell's Kitchen and their, piece of town. So it's some badass ladies and crime, and Jordy's colors on Ming's inks are, woo, they're so good. It's really great. The first issue just came out. It's from Vertigo, and I definitely check it out if you're looking to try something new. From, not just an amazing female artist and colorist, but with an awesome female cast, which, yeah, I'm biased, but it looks great. Batgirl number 36 is just out, and man, oh man, this series is incredible. I was talking with some friends about how insane it must be to be Babs Starr, who we've talked to before, but, Batgirl being her first comic, and they just announced a statue of it. It's insane. But the character design on these new villains coming in issue 36 are really fantastic, and I think it's coming together as a tighter storyline, and I think the creative team is really meshing together more and more as it goes along, and I can't wait to see where the series is going to go, and I'm just so happy that it exists. Last two things that were out this week that I am still waiting to read. It sounds bad when I recommend them, but I'm like, traditionally they've been great. The Fade Out number 3 is out. It is a very not safe for work issue. There's a lot of nudity. Can you imagine? It's some very well-drawn nudity and beautifully colored. But this story, which is an old Hollywood murder mystery, is just, it's great. You can trust Brubaker and Phillips to do awesome noir. It's just, you just know it's going to be good. And the series, no exception to that rule whatsoever. I'm really, really loving the coloring on it. And just excited to see where it goes. I find it a little bit of a tough read sometimes because they did go real period accurate with the language, and it can be a little hard to get through sometimes, as is, watching a lot of Mad Men and things like that. I get the historical accuracy thing, but I wince a couple times every issue. I'm a baby. What can I say? I can get through Witches just fine, but when it comes to anti-Semitism, I guess. Anyway, still a great series, and really excited to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Last thing, Teen Dog. Teen Dog's so great. Jake Lawrence is so fun, and the series is completely filled with references and nods to the indie comics community and a bunch of people who are friends and artists that I really like. And it's just so cute. Teen Dog is so much fun. So, whether you are young or have young friends or just enjoy a dog who eats pizza and skateboards, check out Teen Dog. It's really cute.
She's so sweet. Caleb is gonna answer your tweets.
Brandon Pogrob, who is at Beefog, who doesn't want to make it easy for me to pronounce, asks, if someone wants to start a webcomic, what are some things they should have worked out or in place before they launch it? And all of the advice that I'm going to give you is things that I did not do that you should. If you're going to start a webcomic, there's a lot of things that you need to think about. You need to think about, how far ahead do you want the comic to run? Is it a limited series, or is it something that you're just going to kind of play with and keep expanding from? So basically, do you know where it's going? Do you know if it's something that you want to collect in the long run, or if it's something that you're just going to want to keep doing for years and years and years, which it can be very hard to know because, a lot of these things when you start, it just becomes like, hey, this seems fun. But it's a good idea. It's also a really good idea, especially once you set an updating schedule, to have a little bit of a buffer, and you're always going to run through it. This always happens. If you know you're going to be updating twice a week, start with, a decent chunk of comics so that if you run a little bit behind, or you're traveling, or you're sick, you have some comics ready to go. I say this because I am absolutely terrible at it and I never do it, but it seems to work out really well for people who have self-discipline. And so I would recommend it. I do think it's a good idea to keep consistency in your webcomic in terms of size or dimensions. Save 2 versions of everything that you post. Save a really large file of your comic, something that's like at least, 300 or 600 DPI. If these words mean nothing to you, just ignore them. But something big, a big TIFF file that's print ready, and then, a smaller web ready version that's easier to share and easier to post. And if you keep something in the same dimensions, like say it's always 5x8 or it's always in a square, then eventually, even if you don't think you're going to print it, you have the ability, which a lot of people when they start doing web comics don't think about the eventuality of, I would like to make this a book, or I would like to make a zine of this. And I definitely didn't when I started doing Kate or Die. It was just whatever I thought of at the time. And I would do 4 panels wide or 12 panels tall. And it became very difficult when I went to try and put it into print. So, consider it like you were, if you were going to design a book or the first part of a series, how would you do that? So it's a lot about setting up all the ground for it and a place to build from. And consider how you want to put it online. There was at the convention here in town over the weekend, we talked about this a lot. And, Tumblr and WordPress are both really great places to post webcomics. Tumblr has a very, very easy to use webcomics format that you can change and edit with a pretty limited knowledge of CSS or HTML. That's just like forward and back and at the beginning and a page about your characters. And that's really, really great, especially if you're starting. And then you can build up. And definitely it's worthwhile to ask someone who has done it before or who has built sites like that or has knowledge about advertising and site design to help you once you get to a point that you might need that or you might want to start advertising. So, there's a lot of things to keep in mind, and you could pretty much, there are books about it. There are actual books about it. There's a How to Make Webcomics book out there. But those are definitely some things. And I would say, work out at least the first story arc so you know where you're going, so that when you update, it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. And that's kind of my advice is so bad as it really is. This is what other people do that's so successful and that I can never seem to learn. Mia Moore, who on Twitter is at @ExoMiaMoore, who I've talked to before, you're lovely, hi Mia, asks, how do you keep your writing skills sharp? Any resources or methods? And what's your workflow? I journal a lot. I carry a little Taylor Swift notebook around everywhere that was given to me by my friend Liza. And I try... The new thing that I'm trying is every time that I'm on the bus or every time I'm sitting somewhere waiting for something like a cab or a friend that's late at a restaurant, instead of just flipping through my phone, trying to actually jot stuff down, especially if I'm in the middle of a story in a comic or, working on a pitch or something like that. And I'm not always great at it because I am hopelessly addicted to my phone like most people. But, it's something that really helps. And as well, trying to force myself to do projects that are outside of just my deadlines and my due dates, because I know I have to write, an issue of Edward Scissorhands on it for this day and an issue of Bravest Warriors for this day. But a lot of the time I will find myself getting really lazy, and on the days when I don't have a deadline or when I'm caught up on my work, I'll just kind of sit around and watch cartoons and be kind of lazy because, these things that I'm doing support me financially, so I don't really need to do the extra work, which is not a brag. It's, these days are few and far between. But the thing that I've tried to start doing is, actually making these projects for myself. So I know I want to write a story every week, or I want to be building a collection of short stories, so I'm going to write this much, or I'm going to work on my webcomic, or I'm going to really sit down and try and figure out what I want to do in the long run for like Bravest Warriors or for Scissorhands. And actually, a lot of people will tell you that the best thing to do is to set a goal per day of writing for an hour, or, even half an hour if you're a crazy busy person and writing is not your number one priority. It's just making yourself do it until it becomes habit, until it becomes a thing that you reach for. And I think that's, what helps a lot. I've also been trying to read a lot more, especially, I already read an insane amount of comics, but trying to make myself read more comics and read more short stories and pay attention to them in different ways. When reading a comic and being like, oh, I really, really love this panel layout, or I really love the way that this plot kind of unravels, and taking notes of things in different ways than I definitely used to. So for me, I'm still kind of faking it till I make it and figuring out how it works. But it also really helps to have other people in your life that do write, or that are creating things, so that you kind of feel that little, that nudge, or that, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, well, I know, it's not just me. Like the next time I talk to this person, I'm going to want to tell them what I've been working on or what story ideas are in my head. So all of those things can be really helpful. Chris, who is at Soulful Dealist, I think that's your name? Soulful? Anyway, hi, Chris. Chris asks, one I should have asked from the beginning, are you a fan of any manga? If so, which? I do remember Junji Ito being mentioned, though. I am not a huge manga reader. I definitely would call myself even a very small manga reader, like the size of the Fear Demon in Buffy, which is very little. I haven't read a lot of manga since I was in junior high, and I went through a pretty heavy phase of Clamp addiction, which sounds really bad if you don't know that that's a publisher. Clamp put out like Cardcaptor Sakura and things like that. So I remember being really into that. Obviously crazy about Sailor Moon, but it was definitely more about the TV show than the manga for me, just because I didn't really have access to the manga where I was. And so, it was that, and Magic Knight Rayearth, Cardcaptor Sakura, and like a little bit of Fushigi Yugi, but that was it. And I do really love horror manga. I love Uzumaki. That's definitely one of my favorite go-to books to recommend to people who want to get into horror comics, because I think horror manga definitely gets darker and edgier than a lot of North American horror comics. So it's not a great answer, and it's not that I'm opposed to it at all, because I have a ton of fun reading manga. It's just that I'm so unaware of it, and a lot of it just seems so outside my worldview and the circle of things that I read. And I definitely should read more. People are recommending it to me all the time. So my short answer is not really, but I'm not against it. Manga's pretty great.
Are you ready for this? Kate needs attention, needs a Porsche, needs some Prada. Kate wants a yacht to party with kaiju in the water. Needs some Gucci and Armani, she's a real fashion monster. So have a listen to our sponsor.
Since we last spoke, Less Than Live launched a Patreon. And if you want to know what that is, good news, I'm going to tell you. A Patreon is a monthly subscription service, or kind of a crowdfunding platform, where if you like the show, you can support it financially with money, which is really great, because the show it costs a little bit of money to make. We do it in a real recording studio, and the guys here make those amazing songs. And everything that I'm saying right now, you can watch me say better and with video on the actual Patreon page. It is patreon.com/lessthanlive. And there you can find out what it's all about. So pretty much you can choose an amount of money, if you're interested, to pledge to us monthly. And for those specific amounts of money at different levels and different amounts, you will get different rewards. You can get a voicemail message from me. You can subscribe to get a biannual package of goodies and swag. You can have advance access to what guests we're going to have on the show to ask questions. And these things are going to change and develop as we go along, and we're going to invent new things. And I just really want to make it kind of a cool, interactive, behind-the-scenes experience, and to show, people who do subscribe and who do support the show a little bit extra, and get you all involved. So you can check that out again at patreon.com. That's patron with an E in it, /LessThanLive, and donate a little bit of money if you want. That'd be cool.
Kate's gonna interview you. Kate's gonna interview you now. She's gonna ask a question. Kate's gonna interview you. Kate's gonna interview you now. This is the interview section.
So today we are talking to Marguerite Bennett, who's somebody I've just gotten to know really over the last year, and someone who is, if you've ever met her, and you should make an effort, a total delight of a human being, and also has probably the best collection of sundresses I've ever seen on the planet. Marguerite's a writer and works for DC, Marvel, Boom, writes pretty much like a third of the comics on the shelves right now. Am I right about this, Marguerite?
There are a fair few.
Yeah, there's a fair
Thank you so
few.
much about the sundresses.
Oh man, they're so good. I'm not exaggerating there. Like, the coordination is really top notch.
Oh, cheers.
I like to
Thanks
start
so
the
much
show
for
by
having
just telling
me
you
here.
how pretty you are.
Aw.
But also insanely prolific. So that should probably have taken first place. You're working on Sleepy Hollow. You're working on a new series, Butterfly. You're in the Vertigo Quarterly. You're doing Earth 2. Everything? Everything.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm like one of those, honestly, if you've ever heard this before, but like one of those deep sea fish where the pressure is what holds them together.
Yeah.
And, when you take them out of that environment, they either, and raise them up into the place where that pressure is absent, then they either dissolve or explode, depending on how quickly you do that. So I love being crazy busy.
Yeah.
I love getting to jump around in all these different worlds and explore new things and work with new people, artists, editors, other writers. And so like I couldn't really even imagine, like slowing down. I know it'll happen or I'll burn out and die.
Mm-hmm.
But for the time being, I'm just having a lot of fun with it. And I'm down to a humane 8 issues a month.
Oh my God.
This is where I hope to stay for a little while.
Which is amazing, because I know people who are like, oh my God, you write 3 issues a month? That's so much work. I'm just like, I looked and for the people listening, I was like, Marguerite, can you just send me a little list of the stuff you're working on right now? She sends me this thing that's like a script length of like, oh yeah, don't worry, I have something out literally every week until Christmas, at the very least one thing. And it's so funny because my initial reaction, like instinctively, was oh my God, and within half of a second was I'm so jealous. I wish I was that insanely busy. Because I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I'm like, I have a week off where no script is due, and I feel like I'm going insane.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can, after a con, I can take a day and, try and take a breather. Yeah. But I don't know. I've always been, sorry, I don't know if you're like a huge Harry Potter fan. Because
oh my God, yes.
Okay.
No, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'm complete Hufflepuff as far as like the work ethic. I just, I'm happy when I'm really lucky also because I'm doing something that I love. Mm-hmm. If my job was doing something else, I would be way more sullen and way less prolific. So, and it's also like a game that's, cheating in my favor really because, I just had my 27th birthday. I'm not married. I don't have a house. Like I don't have kids. I don't have a dog. Like, I can, I get to spend all my time, just doing this. So it is like, Charles Soule is the far more impressive person if we're going to like get down to like comparing because he's got, a family and a law firm and like real people responsibilities. I have Cheetos and Netflix. So
yeah, but at the same time, I've just turned 26 and I'm in the same boat. So mm-hmm. I'm like way more like, damn, Marguerite, you're doing it. Because it's incredible. Like, so, I mean, I've got a list here, but it's going to sound more impressive when you say it. What, like, I know I mentioned Sleepy Hollow and Earth 2 and stuff like that. What mm-hmm. is the sort of sum total of the titles that you're working on right now?
Oh, gosh.
Not to put you on the spot. I mean, you can, if you forget some, it's understandable.
Today we had the Death of Wolverine, the Logan Legacy come out, which is a Lady Deathstrike, one-shot story. I'm working on a weekly, which does also like super bump up those stats. It's part of Earth 2 World's End, and then I'm also co-writing on the regular monthly title as well. And then let's see, at Archaea, I've got a series called Butterfly, which is this crazy spycraft story that I'm working on with a screenwriter named Arash Hamel. And the entire story is structured as a dual narrative between a spy who's lately been burned by her agency and a man who was burned, 20 years ago, who, and this is kind of a spoiler, but who's revealed to be her father, who she'd believed had died a war hero. And so the entire book is structured so that each issue is split right down the middle. And the main character, Butterfly, her story heads forward and has this very, precise structure, lots of 2x3 pages, very strict paneling, a lot of stasis as far as the lens with which she views the world, as though it's, done in snapshots, everything very compartmentalized.
Yeah, it's got a really Polaroid kind of look to it, which is very cool.
Yeah, and Tenu Fuso is, he's really brilliant. And then when we get back to her father's narrative, everything runs backwards, and they meet on a splash page. And when you get to his narrative, the palette changes, and the structure starts to unwind. Things start to spread. There are lots of double page united sequences, and the panel sizes start to change, and everything starts to deteriorate. And so I had a lot of fun. I love playing with structure. And so I was really lucky, that Archaea, gave me the room to do something really weird.
Yeah.
Especially since they picked me up, actually at New York Comic Con last year, I want to say. So that was, it was one of the first projects that I'd ever gotten to work on that was outside of superheroes. Then, Sleepy Hollow, of course, which is, the thing that lets me just be a huge, rabid fangirl.
Which is fantastic because, I mean, so much of what I do is basically fan fiction because it's working on, things based on stuff I love. And, I'm just getting into Sleepy Hollow. But it was so funny because my mom has, watched the entire series in a week. She had a vacation of a week and watched all of Sleepy Hollow. And when I told her, I was like, oh, I'm going to be talking to the woman who writes the comic book, she got so excited, which was so fun.
I'm also a huge fan of your mom based off of your Twitter and Instagram. So.
My mom's kind of the best. She's, an active member of the Sex Criminals comic family. So, it's great. But that's really awesome. I'm still getting through the first season because I am a huge wimp and it scares me. And I love it so much. And I love Abby and Ichabod and their relationship. And I can't even imagine how much fun it must be to write the two of them. It's got to be so great. And, but it's scary. So I'm getting through it. And then I can't wait to check out the comic.
Yeah, totally. Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since you and Angelina have characters in there.
Which is so exciting. Can you just Marguerite, hey, brag about that for a second. Hey, Marguerite.
So I decided to name the super cute couple in Sleepy Hollow #1 after Kate and Angelina. I don't want to spoil it. They're just super cutie patooties, and they own a bakery, and they have a daughter, and they're wonderful. And I was super glad that the Sleepy Hollow writers wrote off on that and let us go for it.
I can't even believe that exists. You told me, and you were so offhanded about it at New York Comic Con. You're like, oh yeah, I wrote you in with Angelina as a couple in Sleepy Hollow. I'm like, what? What? That's insane. That's the cutest thing.
No, you have to get through it so you can read the comic.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm loving it. I'm on episode 6 at this point, and it's so good. And my favorite thing about the show so far is that character design of the Sandman. So cool with the sand that comes out of his eyes. It creeped the hell out of me, but it's so good.
There's some really nightmare stuff with some really simple designs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrific.
It reminded me so much. I mean, obviously with the spindly fingers, it's really similar to the character from Pan's Labyrinth, but it had he has such this Guillermo del Toro look to him, which, I'm so taken by that, and that kind of no mouth thing is so so creepy.
I mean, it's beautiful. Like, it really taps into the things that would, not frighten us necessarily, but which communicate something really evil and really unnatural and unsettling. And it's, these images that like will stick with you. Not in like, it's not a gore or a jump thing or anything cheap. It's just, someone really put a lot of time and design into making this, as simple and haunting as possible.
Which is fantastic. And it's so cool. Like, I feel that I wasn't really aware of the show when it was going on its first season. And then it kind of, people kept telling me it had such an, kind of a Buffy vibe, but like the scary episodes of Buffy. And then I got really into it. And then that first episode, when there's that mirror jump scare, I was just like, nope. I'm done. But I still, Abby and Ichabod are too much fun. We had a guy actually, so we just started doing this Patreon thing, and part of it is getting people to ask questions, like they sort of have first crack at it. And we got one. It's our first month. And this guy, Dave, had a question for you, actually, which I thought was really neat, which was, what is it like working on a licensed property that is only in its second season and is still on television? Like, what's that like? Because, I mean, are you getting info from the show as it's going on, or are you kind of making it up?
I do have some spoilers, but nothing like I didn't want to overstep my bounds, and I'm a fan of the show also, so I don't want to know too much. Like I want to stay as unspoiled as I can while still doing my job.
Right.
And so it's great that it's a new show because there's a lot of room, to expand into the mythos, and a lot of freedom to embroider out through the characters and through their backstories and through their relationships with one another, and having it. Like the fandom is really the thing that, propelled me, through this love. And, the idea that I could, write for people who had the same, like passions and delighted in the same relationships that I did was such an honor and such, a huge motivation also. It wasn't, like, oh God, like I hope people like this. I hope I don't screw up the canon because I said something contradictory to something that was in Batman 387.
Right.
And, like there's some times where it was, was just trying to think of how like a page would flow if it was going to be posted on Tumblr.
Oh, trust me, I know what that's about.
There's some awareness going on, maybe.
Well, it's there's nothing wrong with knowing your audience, and when you've been your audience, if that makes any sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
where
totally.
You've been, a fan of the show.
And George Coelho and Tamara Bonvillain have just been like such a wonderful team, and Noelle Stevenson, who's doing our backups, who's just such a doll of a person, and just got announced on the the Thorn #1 annual.
I can't even believe it. I had to sit down for a while.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it's a really, really cool team, and I love that Noelle's doing the backups in it. Like that's just it just makes so much sense. It's
she was
awesome.
such a huge part of the fandom, like in its early days, drawing the most adorable fan art in the entire world. That
was part of the reason I wanted to check it out too. It's just like there's got to be something to this. Got to be a reason there's all this fan art. And I mean it is. It's got. The character interactions on the show are just so awesome. So it's one of those things where like I'm so excited to read the comics, but I feel like I'm probably okay if I finish the first season, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Everything takes place in from the comics takes place in the first season between certain episodes.
Well, yeah, that's got to be a lot easier to work on than dealing with the back continuity of like the DC universe. Because I mean, okay, so how long have you been doing stuff? I mean, writing for DC?
Oh, July 31st, 2013 was my first comic. So I've been doing this, like how many months? Is that 16 months? I can't do math. 17 months? Something like that.
A little while. So does that, I mean, I know this is a really like base level question, and I apologize for that because I hate to get asked them myself. But when you go into and when you have to do the research for something like that, is it the kind of thing where you get? Because I mean, I've worked on other stuff like with Fraggle Rock and stuff like that. I watched the show and I read the comics that had been done before. But when you're doing stuff in the DC universe, is there like a package, or do you just Wikipedia binge for days and days?
With Sleepy Hollow, it had been taken down from Hulu, so I had to do some rule breaking to rewatch the show.
Yeah, I've done that.
And then a lot of the time, it's going on like eBay to try and find like, if there are rare single issues that I need that, didn't make it into trade. I try and, buy whatever trades I need for, usually, for the superhero characters, because they have the most, elaborate backstories, and they've passed the hands of so many different writers that, based off of, whatever team was working on it, the character can come off in very different ways. And sometimes you need to, address that, I don't want to say inconsistency, but address that that tone shift. And other times you just sort of take it as, this is the progression. Like, there's a wonderful Lois Lane comic, and I've tried to find it. Like, I saw it on Tumblr, like, I don't know, a year ago, and I've never been able to track it back down, of Lois Lane, like, essentially falling and Superman like flying in like he's gonna rescue her. And in the first, she's like in the 40s, and she's like the reporter is gonna get the scoop, and she's like, oh, Superman, do you have a quote? Like, I caught this mad scientist with his death ray. And then it like shifts down, and she's in a wedding dress, and then like when he flies in, she's like, aha, that proves that you love me more than Lana Lang, and so we have to get married, big boy. And and so it goes this progression, and the very last one is her just like flicking her wrist at Superman, just super dismissive, and being like, I don't have time for this. And like, I'm like, I have to report, like war journalism to do. And it was just so great. It just summarized like all at once, like my feelings about, Lois Lane, and then also about, the shift and the change in women in comics, and just also the progression of characters, as they become increasingly beloved to an audience.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, with really storied characters like Lois Lane, I had like, that was the largest amount of pressure I think I ever had to try and do credit to all the very different things she meant to very different people. Whereas Batman, is, iconic, and then there's this is not like a detriment, but there is, this idea that Batman is permanent, is eternal, that his mentality is fixed. And that it's, it's been consistent, for decades.
Yeah.
And so that, I grew up on the Batman animated series, and
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have to go back and, read, I mean, like I had already read a dozen, or hundreds of Batman comics, but, I didn't have to go doing research on that point. For Lady Deathstrike, that was, like that research was really interesting, as, there had been huge, like, chunks of her history that I'd never learned about. And to get to incorporate and address like those shifts in her character was like, I don't know, I really liked it. It was really rewarding as far as incorporating that into the story.
I think there's, especially with characters with Lois Lane, I mean, as you say that, I'm thinking about it, and from a writer's standpoint, she would be very challenging. Like, 'cause I think people who love her in a very distinct and important way. I mean, because she is this character where she's a love interest. But I think so many writers have fought to make her stand on her own, because she's a lady reporter. Like, there are a lot of love interests in comics for male superheroes who aren't anywhere near as headstrong as Lois Lane. So I totally get that. And it's sort of like, Wonder Woman, again, has been so many different things. And when something is so iconic and it's reached that stage where it's been written by so many hundreds of different people that you can really attack it from any angle. Whereas Lois Lane, I think there's these particular things about her that are so beloved that, yeah, you gotta hit that. I mean, I'm a Lois Lane Superman's girlfriend fangirl.
Yeah,
like those comics are some of the best, most ridiculous comics in the world. But no, I wondered about that, because I guess everyone's approach to that is really different.
Yeah, and like in the era, of social media, but especially of Twitter, where I'm the most active, a lot of people were weighing in whenever I would, do an interview, or just, even though I was just announced on it. One of the first questions, so it was Lois Lane #1, and people were like, okay, so what role does Superman play? And I said, well, it's really her story. Not his. And then I had people swoop in and be like, you don't have to make her a single woman to make her strong. Women in relationships are just as strong as single women. And then, it got the title Superman's girlfriend, or sorry, so Superman : Lois Lane #1.
Yeah.
And then people swooped in and said, Lois Lane is independent and stands on her own. Why do you keep tying her back to Superman? And it was just like,
people on the internet had a knee-jerk reaction to something without thinking about the consequences. Marguerite, you're having one over on me.
oh, So, I just kept my, hands off, and like he does show up, and he shows up for a single panel in the comic.
Yeah.
And he has zero dialogue. It's this beautiful panel by Megan Hetrick, who is, a dream artist to work with. I just left it at that, and I didn't say a single word about it.
And I feel like the comic was really well responded to.
Yeah, cheers.
I remember, selling it in the store, and people were very excited about it, and that was really awesome. And it made me be like, man, I wish there was a Lois Lane comic. But I always feel that way about so many of the kind of less represented female characters, because I'm so biased where I want to read all about the ladies. So biased, which I'm sure I'm the only one. So you're working on that. You're working on Earth 2, Sleepy Hollow, and you're working with Kieran Gillen now. So how's that going? Does he make as many horrible, awful puns when he's working with you as he does on Twitter? Because I swear to God, I'm gonna kill him.
I love getting like Kieran's like train of thought in his scripts.
Yeah,
explaining does certain things. Like, that's the best, and you're just like wondering under what circumstances this was written. It's great. I love Kieran's scripts. It literally like makes my day when one pops up in my inbox.
That's awesome.
So I wound up getting looped into the Marvel retreat last summer, and Kieran, Phil Jimenez, and I, and our editors in the project, Jonathan and Will, just wound up like sitting upstairs in like this hotel bar and just getting drinks and just like chatting the story through. And like I don't think Phil's pen was still like in his journal the entire time that we were talking. He was sketching armor and sketching monsters and sketching cover ideas and this and that, and it was just really great. And it was just, such a fun, like optimistic, kind of like inspiring moment, that a character, this controversial character, who was very new to the Marvel universe, had this, already had this like community behind her that really cared about her. And, even if it was just, the little handful of us sitting in a hotel bar. So it was a lot of fun. So
many things come from those.
Yeah. Has anyone taken you up on your hit against Kieran, or is he still alive?
I don't understand how he's still alive. Kieran Gillen, if you follow him on Twitter, is the worst. I love it so much because I've known Kieran for a while, and we hung out a bunch when we were in Ireland, and I followed him on Twitter for ages, and then someone posted on Tumblr the other day, which I don't know if you saw it, just all those things of Kieran doing puns and Matt Fraction threatening to kill him.
Yep.
And I couldn't stop laughing because the part of me was just like, how am I not screen capped in this? I'm constantly responding to these. Just going like, Kieran, what is wrong with you? He's awful. He's really gotten into it now. I think now he's had that taste of like everyone threatening to murder him. Well, it was so funny. So I tweeted, I was like, I will pay anyone $2,000 to kill Kieran Gillen. And as soon as I tweeted, I was just like, I really hope no one thinks I'm being serious. I'm sure it's going to be on Bleeding Cool like the next day. Kate Leth and Kieran Gillen feuding, threatens to murder him. But someone's
still partying at the Thought Bubble because they had their release party for the Wiccan Divine #1 trade.
Yeah, Gosh Comics.
Yep.
Man, that was crazy. But that book is good. But he seems to still be alive.
Yes.
Check in. Jamie hasn't reported anything, so
okay.
I will try not to kill Kieran. I know you have to continue to work with him.
we got a few more issues to do.
All right. I'll let him live for now.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Hey, I'm nothing if not generous.
There we go.
So you got that. I keep being so worried that I'm going to miss something and not mention something.
Oh, no worries. I mean, like Angela's so much fun. Like how the entire book is structured, since he and I are co-writing it, is that he takes care of this 15-page, sort of like the overstory. Like this is the thing that ties the the first 6-issue arc together. And he's working with Phil, and then I have Okay, let me back up. So Angela has a traveling companion named Sarah, who's a new character who she knew in her past before Angela discovered, her Asgardian identity. And Sarah was killed in action, in her past, and now Sarah has reappeared without explanation, and Angela is sort of like struggling with, her feelings about this and her feelings about death, especially. And Sarah is less of a fighter and more of a bard, and she's interested in art and music. And so within each story, Sarah tells sort of a fantastical tale about Angela, and they might be true, they might be not, they might not be. And it just sort of like winds into these 5 pages done by Stephanie Hans, whose work is exquisite.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she does the.
I'm gonna hate this if I get it wrong, but did she do that piece with Gamora for the anti-bullying? Those covers for Marvel?
It's like
Gamora leaning over a tree. It's the background on my computer.
That's awesome.
But I absolutely, absolutely love it. So I don't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all.
It was her. Yeah, it was her.
Great. Awesome.
That picture is absolutely gorgeous. So I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, she paints all the pages, and like the panels are broken up. Like, it's a work of like, almost like Orthodox iconography. Like, it's just, it's amazing. These are things that I would, hang on my wall in a heartbeat. And so it's a lot of pressure actually to be like, I have to write something good enough to warrant her painting it.
Yeah.
So.
That's a thing. And I mean, I'd ask you about it because I've just been doing the writing thing for like a year now, but does it ever feel to you that it is completely insane that you get to write these things for these characters that you love, and then the artists that you love draw them? So it's like you get paid to commission art from your favorite people, and then you get like you that's your living.
Yep.
Does that ever feel insane?
No, and like there are times, where I did the Vertigo quarterly anthology. They came out in October. It was yellow, and I did this like creepy horror story about God and the devil and children. And
perfect.
Shelley Bond at Vertigo and my editor Sarah Miller wound up taking like a real shine to the story, and they said, we want to find an artist, who we really think will be perfect. What about Bill Sienkiewicz? And I had to lie down. I was like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him at New York Comic Con. Sorry, I got all shrill and fangirly.
No, it was perfect. That's so charming.
And he's such a gentleman, and he gave me like one of the pages from our story. And I mean, he's like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. I'm looking at it right now. It's so frightening. I love it to pieces.
Like when we started doing Edward Scissorhands, and my editor Sarah Gatos was like, who would you want on covers? And the first names I threw out, I was like, well, I want Joe Quinones, and I want Kevin Wada, and I want Declan Shalvey. And
the Kevin Wada and the deck covers, those were so killer.
And Joe's is just was just in previews, and it's so amazing because this character, the Megs, who's like the teen girl in it, he drew her kind of like Shelley Duvall almost. I don't know. There's something about her, and it's gorgeous. It really does look like the cover of a teen mystery story, which is really the look that I was kind of going for, at least with the tone of it. And it's just like, I remember when we got the email back from Sarah, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Kevin's in." I'm just like, oh, Kevin Wada's gonna draw a comic for my comic. And like, I feel sick a little bit when I think about it because it's so exciting. And all 3 of them, like, they're just like, and everybody, and like Gabriel Rodriguez, who I'm a huge Lock and Key fan, and so
he's one of my favorite living artists. I mean, like, Lord.
Oh, and the nicest person. I just met him at New York Comic Con, and it was like, I was freaking out.
That's so stellar. Oh yeah, you did the signing with him.
Yes, which is nuts.
That's awesome.
How in my life do I sign with Gabriel Rodriguez? And like sitting next to Louise Simonson, no friggin' big deal. Just like, I'm gonna pee. No, I just felt like asking it because I mean, artists or writers, I think, who've been doing it for so many years, I guess that wears off maybe a little bit.
I'm not there yet.
No, it's still the most exciting thing when you get pages back and you're like, oh, hey, I wrote that. And this person who is insanely talented at drawing drew it. And I get paid for that. Yeah. Like, I should be paying for this.
Like, I wake up, every day and I'm so grateful and so astonished that this is how my life has turned out so far. And, I've struggled a lot with insecurity and anxiety and depression. And so I just, this perpetual astonishment. Like every day I like wake up to this surprise that
Mhm.
this is the person that I woke up as.
And you've got Phil Noto doing covers on Butterfly.
Oh, he's so tremendous.
So no big deal. Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite people and super
absolutely.
sweet. So like, it's one of those questions that I just think I never heard, know, writers talk about or heard it asked on panels, which is like, what is that like? Because I think, I just, every time I get one of those emails, every time I get pages back, it's just, it feels crazy.
Yeah. What's it like? It's totally bitchin'.
We got it made. I don't know how else to say it. Our lives are cool. Our job is cool.
But like, I'm so grateful, just for this chance and for, that DC picked me up and that Scott, chose me, and that, the writers have been, or the writers and the readers have been so supportive and, have turned out and like taken risks on, books that I've been on, especially me being, unpublished before, the Batman annual last year. So, I really can't thank them enough. Like, it's because of them that, I get to go to cons, I get to keep doing this, and I get to, to meet these people and turn out stories that they hope, they love in turn. So, I don't know. I'm all like warm and fuzzies, and I'm pretty gross right now, so don't come near me.
No, it's really good. I mean, that is crazy. So unpublished last year, and now you're working on 8 titles a month. Kids, it can happen. This could be you. That is.
You don't want it. You'll be crazy. It's okay. You'll never sleep.
Yeah.
This will be your hobby and your social life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
weird. Like, do you ever get like, I don't know, I feel like a huge imposter whenever I go to cons.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Standing at bars and being like, I grew up reading that person's work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, and now they're gonna buy me a drink. I can't, I don't know how to process this.
Well, I mean, Scott, but I was walking down the hall, like past his table at NYCC, and he like called out to me. He's like, "Hey, Kate, how's it going? Come on over." And like started talking to me and was like, "Oh, this is my friend Kate," introducing me to somebody. And the entire time in my head, I'm just screaming, "This is Scott Snyder. He writes Batman." And even though it's like, oh yeah, we're contemporaries, we work in the same business. Like, I'm not nobody. I have all these things coming out. Like, I am published, but at the same time, it's just like, even though we're friends, even though we've spoken several times, we've had drinks at the same parties, we know the same people. Yeah. It's just like, you write Batman. And I felt the same way when I met Brian K. Vaughan, and because I talked about the Valkyries and was just like, oh hey, I run that, and he was so friendly and sweet about it and excited about them. And I'm just standing there being like, you wrote Why the Last Man? You're right, Saga. And I think, I'm sure as you have, because I've seen you at conventions, you can totally talk to people. We socialize. We're human. We're not freaking out on the outside. But I
am rightly scolded because I am still freaking out on the inside.
Oh,
and I do come off as quite the fangirl. I try to hold it together, but sometimes my inner flounce just has to present itself.
I think I've really developed this thing where I will meet people that I'm so excited about and just say right away, I'm like, listen, I'm a huge fan. I don't want to freak out because nobody wants that, but I need to tell you right now, I think you're fantastic. And most people are so cool about that. Like, once you get past that, it's almost like it's better than when they can tell you're kind of fangirling and trying not to. It's almost better to just address it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I've kind of taken to doing that, when it feels appropriate. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've met tons of people that you've completely freaked out about.
Yeah.
Right? How do you not?
I'll preserve my honor and not mention specifics.
Oh, I was going for it for a second, but no, that's fine. That's fine.
Like, the funny part is, like, the people that you meet that you don't, I mean, because so much of the industry, like, when I was growing up, I had no idea what anyone looked like. And, even with the introduction of social media, like, I never, really put together faces and names. And so they're, okay, I'm jumping back to New York Comic Con last year, when I met Kieran for the first time. I had no idea, like, what he looked like, or, that I had been talking to him in a bar.
Yeah. Oh, so, God, yeah, I've had that happen so many times. You just have no idea who you're talking to, and then it turns out it's someone that you're like, oh, yeah, no, I grew up reading your comics. Cool. Whatever. I'm not going to hyperventilate.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And it's so nice because, you know, you hear, like, you know, don't meet your idols.
Yeah.
You know, because so many times, like, you know, people are people. And, you know, especially after, like, a day at a con, you know, if you run into someone at a bar, you know, they've been on all day and now they, you know, want to drink and hang out and chat with their friends. And I'm going to throw Kieran under the bus here.
Any day of the week.
So last year, you know, I wrote for DC Comics one of the Villains Month or the Villains Month issue, Lobo #1, which was very
sexy Lobo,
contentious.
Right? Sexy emo Lobo.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
And then you know, so that was all, you know, I got like a ton of like rape and death threats and like things like that.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, even though it had come out like a month prior, people, you know, I didn't really have anything coming out until November then. So really all folk wanted to talk to me about at last year's, you know, New York was that book and was the controversy. And, so, you know, after I realized that it was like, you know, Kieran I was talking to, you know, like, and I had been, you know, talking to somebody else about, you know, that I felt, you know, pretty, like, you know, crummy. I'm not going to cuss on your show that much.
That's fine.
And, you know, Kieran said, you know, well, what I said was, that really wasn't how I ever pictured, like, my first, you know, solo comic going. And he's, you know, asked me, like, did I know what his first solo comic was? And I told him he had me at a disadvantage. And he said, no one remembers the first comics. They only remember the good comics. And
that's true.
Really, like, that was, like, really true and, like, really stuck with me. And that's, like, you know, a piece of advice that I, like, you know, try and pass on now.
That's Kieran.
But he doesn't want me to tell that story because it ruins his street cred, so.
No, that's fine. Now you've only told several thousand people, so
there we go.
It's cool. But that's really good. I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind because I definitely get that way about stuff sometimes. I'm just like, that one issue or that one thing, those couple panels, people are gonna, that's gonna be my rep now, and you know, it's not the way it is. People love the stuff that they love, and I mean, I get it's clearly all worked out for you. So, well, come on, I don't talk to losers. That's terrible.
Oh my god, we need that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, Caitlin, I don't talk to losers. Oh, I feel really bad. I take it all back now. So you're doing all that stuff. I clearly know how NDAs work, but is there anything going on over the next couple months or the next year that you can talk about that you're excited about?
Let's see. I've got. I was announced on Maximum Ride for Marvel, which is an adaptation of James Patterson young adult series.
Yes.
I really wanted to work with Sana at Marvel, and I get the chance to work with Alex Sanchez and then Stephanie Hans is doing our covers again. And let's see. Awesome. And I especially want to do something young adult, frankly. And so many times at conventions, people would bring there these precocious, wonderful girls up to my table, and they'd ask what was appropriate, and I had nothing.
Yep.
I'm a horror writer, and I just Lois Lane was the safest thing I could think, to give them. And even that has a lot of body horror and, a lot of dire circumstances. So, I'm looking forward to working on that. And then, I have, another very big project coming up at Marvel, for next spring and summer. And then at DC, I don't think I can say what I'm at DC, but I'm if this goes according to plan, I am so oh my god, screaming into a pillow, excited about getting to do this.
Man,
so
it's dreamy. It's so exciting to see you doing this kind of stuff because it's that's what I want. That's what I want to do.
Cheers.
So that's really awesome. I know it's so awful whenever you talk to comics people and you're like, so what are you working on? Everyone's like, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
It's this veil of constant secrecy, which is really
no matter
funny.
What you're working on, everyone else's projects sound way cooler.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Everything everyone is doing is more exciting than what I'm doing, and the stuff I'm doing is really exciting. Yep. But I totally get it. I'm sure you get that every once in a while, someone gets announced on a project and you're just like, well, I guess I'm go sit in this bucket.
on the cone of shame.
Yeah. Even though you wake up and you're like, oh wait, no, I write comics for a living. My life is still really great.
Yeah.
Marguerite, are you traveling at all in the next while? Like, what's your con schedule coming up?
No, I think I'm like pretty shut down. I'm hoping to go to Emerald City next year.
Do it.
Yeah, it sort of like depends on like my my workload around then.
Yeah.
Because some things are going to start to kick into high gear, but I think I've gone kind of dormant for the winter, unfortunately.
No, it's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. And I went to a bunch of different cons this year, and I because of my workload, like I've seen people like just like completely blow deadlines and lose books, just trying to like meet expectations for fans and for that con circuit. And so I'm trying to sort of pick and choose, maybe change it up where I go next year. There are cons that I love, and I really don't know how to decide what stays and what goes. I had a good time at pretty much every place. And like San Diego makes me want to come home and just like die peacefully in my bed as an old woman. But at the same time, I don't know, how I would ever cut that show. Whereas, Heroes, didn't necessarily, accomplish any of the goals that I had set out. But at the same time, I had a ton of fun there. And so, I don't know. I'm really torn. And, I want to try C2E2, and, I want to try, WonderCon, and I would love to try, Thought Bubble next year. But
oh, man.
I don't know. I have no idea. I'm too new. I haven't figured this out yet.
Yeah, it's this. I feel like I went for basically everything this year, and now I've learned a little bit, and I really want to do more like European shows, which of course becomes more of a financial strain. But at the same time, it's like I guess I've only really been to the one, but I'm also the show in Puerto Rico where it's like any excuse to. Oh, it was great. It was great. I spent like 3 days in a pool and signed some comics. I went to the beach in Puerto Rico. It was great. What more do you want from a convention? And Ireland, I mean, Dice was probably the best show that I went to all year.
Really?
Oh, man, that show. Like, I cannot say enough good things about it. I don't even understand it. It just has the best environment. Everyone is so nice. There's no weird drama. There's always weird drama at these conventions, and it just wasn't. Everyone was just cool. Everybody hung out. We went to one of those dinners where there's always like 12 people, and as soon as you hear about it, you start getting stressed because you're like, oh, everybody's gonna be late, and we're gonna have to. No, it went perfectly fine. Everyone showed up on time. We ordered. It was great, and everything is kind of within walking distance. So I absolutely loved it, and the people at Big Bang Comics who run it are some of the sweetest people. So that show was great, and Emerald City also was
absolutely
fantastic. I mean, I love TCAF. I go every year. It's a great indie con. But yeah, Emerald City really, it's just so crazy how that show is the same size or like in the same kind of bracket as San Diego, New York Comic Con, but it is 10,000 times better.
Too Dark Magic, presumably.
It's so good. I mean, yeah, something about it is really fantastic.
And I've been asking people like what's their favorite, because I'm just with the same thing where I want to try everything. I want to go everywhere and see what are my favorites.
I really want to do Thought Bubble. It's gonna be awful. This weekend's gonna be awful. You and I are just going to be like tweeting at each other, sitting at home.
You, me, and Jose Cuervo. It'll be fun.
Yeah. My friend Jack Daniels.
There we go.
Yeah, hanging out. No, it's crazy. Yeah, it's like there's so many shows and there's an infinite number of options for them. But Marguerite, I always end the show asking what people are reading, and it doesn't have to be modern recommendations, but it's I have a limited worldview of comics, so I like to know what are you into? That was awful. Marguerite, what are you reading?
we're having this like YouTube. Well, we get to celebrate Halloween with our regular friend group, so this Friday we're having this like creepy YouTube like creepypasta party. And
awesome.
So I pulled out a bunch of like horror comics that we can essentially do like to read aloud or to share. And so Emily Carroll's Through the Woods is definitely on there.
Yep.
Then,
continuing the proud tradition of mentioning that book in every episode of the show.
There we go. Good. And it deserves it.
It's so good.
Like, that book haunts me.
Did you read her new Halloween comic?
Sorry?
Did you read?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Good.
And the ads. That was so creepy.
It was amazing.
And just like her use of color and texture.
It's
oh god.
Go on.
So we've got like a bunch of horror comics that are going to be coming out. And then let's see, Junji Ito. I have, let's see, just like select stories from one of his collections, like The Secret of Amigara Fault and The Long Dream, and and The Human Chair, yeah. And so some freaky stuff with that. And then as far as things you can go out in the store, Lumberjanes, The Wicked and the Divine. I feel like I never have anything like really interesting to add, like Saga and things like that. Things that everyone is already reading, and so my recommendation does not help. Like The Wake just came out in trade, and so that's terrific to pick up. The Woods by James Tynion. Let's see.
That's some good stuff. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And then Batman, of course.
Yeah.
Though Batman 36 came out today.
Obscure choice.
Yeah, I know, right? And there's a thing that was revealed in Batman 36 today that I am so proud of, because Scott is an evil genius, and we seeded that plot all the way back in the Batman Annual 2, more than a year ago now. So I hope people enjoy it, because it's super messed up. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm so late. I'm so behind on comics.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Those are some great things. So if people want to check out your comics, they can basically pick up 5 to 10% of comics on the shelves. And otherwise, where would they find you online?
Online, on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, and then Gmail. My username is Evil Marguerite, all one word, because no one is using that combination of letters.
It's very good.
And I'm most active on Twitter. I am really terrible about checking my Gmail. I will get better at that, I promise. And but then and I'm learning to. I'm trying to expand and be better at social media, as opposed to just like slouching my way through on coffee breaks between.
It's a terrifying world. Don't blame yourself. It's a slog. But it can be lovely, because that's sort of how I met you too. So
yeah, there we go.
Look at that friendship. Thank you so much, Marguerite. If you want to, I can't even go through your Rolodex of comics, but you know where to find her. Thank you so much for being on the show and for talking to me and for giggling a lot. That was really great.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Marguerite.
Yeah, take care.
I know that you want into the pages inside my heart.
Well, that's our show. I'm off to the Miami Book Fair November 22nd and 23rd, and I'm doing a couple of workshops there, which I think you can find the info for on the Miami Book Fair website. It's going to be fun and weird, and I have no idea what to expect. After that, I'm going to be in LA for a couple of weeks doing pretty much nothing, and I cannot wait. Except that I am doing a signing at Meltdown Comics on November 29th at noon-ish. And that's going to be for Bittersweets. It's kind of a launch for that, as well as for Edward Scissorhands, because Drew Roush, who is the artist, is going to be there. So for one day, my lovely parents reunite. That's Boom and IDW. And they're letting us kind of do a fun signings party. So it's going to be great. So if you're in LA, you should come to that and say hi. I suspect I'm going to be in LA a lot in the next little while, but we'll see. In the meantime, you can rate and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. If you like the show and want to keep us from screaming, you can consider donating at villagesoundcast.com, or you can subscribe to our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/lessthanlive. Have I talked about it enough? It's gonna get worse. Have a great week. If you want to get more from us, you can do so on our Facebook page, on Twitter at LTLcast, and you can get our show notes at lessthanlivecast.tumblr.com. See you in a few weeks, sports racers. I'll miss you.
Hey, Amnesia Forgetful Face. This was a Village Soundcast Network original production.
I'm not going to answer that. I would like to. He would giggle so hard. I'm just throwing out so much post-podcast material here. He's so cute.